Number 10. Murmansk. The Murmansk was a Soviet warship built during the early 1950s. It was sold to an India-based company for scrap in 1994 when it was nearly 40 years old. Plans were made to tow the vessel to its new home from Norway, but the tugboat's cable snapped shortly after leaving, causing the Murmansk to run aground. The heavily listing ship sat in place for years. While it attracted curious visitors, fishermen and conservationists became increasingly worried that the damaged vessel was harming the environment. Experts mistakenly assumed that storms would destroy Murmansk, but it held together in one piece until 2009. The Norwegian government finally decided that year to remove the ship from the water. It was too damaged to tow like normal, so workers built a breakwater around it and waited for the site to dry up. Then they took the vessel apart piece by piece. There are lingering concerns about the possible presence of radioactive substances like polonium on the Murmansk. Scientists ruled this out, but people still have their doubts, including some researchers who suspect that the findings are inaccurate. And they did find several non-radioactive hazardous materials, including fuel remains, asbestos, and PCB. But if there were any radioactive chemicals aboard the ship, we'll probably never know because it was recycled and no longer exists. Number 9. HMS Resolute. In 1853, the British Royal Navy ship HMS Resolute set out for the Arctic under Captain Henry Kellett. Its mission was to find missing explorer Sir John Franklin and his crew, who had disappeared 7 years earlier while searching for a sea route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans called the Northwest Passage. As luck would have it, the Resolute became trapped in an ice floe off northern Canada, leaving its crew helpless as it drifted 1.7 miles eastward every day. They waited out the cold winter and abandoned the ship in the spring of 1854. Little did the crew know while this was all going on that the Resolute had broken free from the ice. In September 1855, over a year and a half after the ship was deserted, the crew of an American whaling vessel called the George Henry spotted the Resolute off the coast of Baffin Island, Canada. It had drifted some 1,200 miles from where it got stuck. The United States Congress bought the ship for $40,000 and refitted it. As a so-called token of community, U.S. Navy Commander Henry J. Hartstein sailed the ship to England and presented it to Queen Victoria in 1856. Resolute remained in British waters, serving in the Royal Navy until 1879, when it was retired and salvaged for timber. Some of the vessel's wood was used to build a desk that sits in the Oval Office of the White House. Number 8. MV Lyubov Orlova. Built in Yugoslavia in 1976, MV Lyubov Orlova was a Soviet ice-strengthened cruise ship that was used primarily for Antarctic cruises. It ran aground in 2006 and was towed to Ushuaia in Tierra del Fuego, Argentina's southernmost city. They racked up $251,000 in charter debts and was repossessed in 2010. It spent the next 2 years impounded in Newfoundland, Canada. Neptune International Shipping bought the Lyubov Orlova in 2012 with plans to scrap it. While being towed to the Dominican Republic in 2013, the ship broke free from its tugboat. The crew tried to reattach the line, but their efforts were no match for 22-mile-per-hour winds and 10-foot-tall, 3-meter waves. An offshore supply vessel regained control of the vessel to prevent it from posing a hazard to regional gas and oil operations. But once the Lyubov Orlova reached international waters, it was no longer considered a danger and was set free. A few days later, the ship was seen drifting in a northeasterly direction, 290 miles, 467 kilometers from St. John's, Newfoundland. Less than a month after that, an emergency position indicating radio beacon EPIRB was picked up 700 miles off the coast of Kerry, Ireland. An EPIRB device must be exposed to water before it starts transmitting signals, leading officials to believe that the Lyubov Orlova probably sank. In 2014, rumors circulated that the ship was spotted off the English coast and that it was infested with rats, but these claims were debunked. The vessel's fate remains a mystery. Number 7. SS Urang Medan. In 1948, the crew of an American vessel allegedly discovered a ghost ship called the SS Urang Medan drifting in the Pacific, roughly 460 miles, 740 kilometers southeast of the Marshall Islands. The boat was reportedly littered with crew members' bodies, and it supposedly caught fire and sank shortly after its discoverers boarded. According to the story, the SS Urang Medan's crew actively avoided being detected by authorities while traveling from a small Chinese port to Costa Rica. Native people living on Bokak Atoll in the Marshall Islands and an Italian missionary claimed that a German man initially survived the disaster. He explained that the ship's crew perished from the poisonous fumes of an improperly stored cargo of sulfuric acid. The survivor supposedly died shortly after recounting the ordeal. Nobody's ever been able to confirm what happened aboard the SS Urang Medan or if it even existed in the first place. Its history and origins are unknown, and searchers for an accident investigation report and the ship's official registration have failed to turn up any records. What do you think? Was the SS Urang Medan a tall tale, or is it possible that it literally flew under the radar throughout its entire existence? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. L. Wade Childress. If you drive through the small city of Prairie du Chien in Crawford County, Wisconsin, you might pass by an old 176-foot-long, 54-meter pushboat sitting in an open field. It's called the L. Wade Childress, and nobody seems to know how it got to its current resting place over 200 miles north of where it sank. In fact, very little is known about the ship, period. The L. Wade Childress was built in 1948. It sank in the Mississippi River near Fort Madison, Iowa in December 1985 due to an early freeze that caused ice chunks to flow through the water and batter many vessels. The boat was raised the following year and somehow ended up along Highway K in Prairie du Chien. It's been there for years now. Rumors have circulated about someone wanting to turn the L. Wade Childress into a bed and breakfast, but it hasn't happened. Nobody even seems to know who was behind these alleged plans or why nothing's been done with the vessel. Most of the ship's rooms are empty and falling apart. There's not much to see inside besides some bathrooms, a fuse box, and a stove. Still, given its bizarre location, the L. Wade Childress remains an ongoing topic of curiosity. Number 5. SV Caz 2. In April 2007, a three-man crew set out on a 39-foot, 12-meter catamaran called the SV Caz 2 with plans to spend 2 months sailing around Australia. At the helm was the skipper, Des Batten, who was joined by his brothers Peter and John Tunstead. The trio was bound for Western Australia, where they all lived. 3 days later, the vessel was seen drifting over 100 miles, 161 kilometers off the Australian coast, near the White Sunday Islands with its engine idling. The Caz 2 was in near-perfect condition, minus a rippled sail. Newspaper pages, a pile of clothing on a bench, a laptop, and a half-empty cup of coffee were found aboard. Numerous theories regarding the missing men quickly sprang up. It was possible, perhaps, that they had fallen victim to pirates or drug smugglers. Or maybe they staged their disappearance as part of an insurance scam. Some people even wondered if a supernatural event was to blame. The 3 men were never found. Investigators surmised that one of the Tunstead brothers fell overboard while trying to untangle a fishing lure that was caught in the boat's propeller. The other Tunstead brothers tried to rescue him and also fell into the water. Batten dropped the sails and turned around to look for the pair and was knocked overboard by the yacht's boom due to a change in wind direction. Of course, this is all speculative. Nevertheless, in 2008, a coroner officially ruled that the men had drowned in a freak accident. Number 4. Ryu Un Maru. In March 2011, Japan experienced the strongest earthquake in the country's recorded history. It was followed by a catastrophic tsunami. The colossal wave washed a 164-foot-long, 50-meter fishing boat called the Ryu Un Maru away from its mooring in Aomori Prefecture on the island of Hokkaido. Japanese officials assumed that the vessel was long gone and canceled its registration. Unbeknownst to them, the resilient ship floated across the Pacific Ocean. A year later, a Royal Canadian Air Force patrol spotted the Ryu Un Maru in the Gulf of Alaska. Because its registration had been canceled, the ship no longer had a legal owner, and its former owner had no desire to salvage it because there were already plans in place to scrap it before it was swept away by the tsunami. A Canadian vessel called the Bernice C claimed salvage rights to the Ryu Un Maru and tried to tow it, but was unable to pump out its ruptured fuel tank. To prevent the wrecked ship from becoming a navigational hazard, a U.S. Coast Guard cutter set it ablaze with cannon fire in 2012. 4 hours after bursting into flames, the Ryu Un Maru sank 6,000 feet to the bottom of the sea. During its descent, it released an unknown amount of diesel fuel into the water. Number 3. Belle Amica. In August 2006, an Italian Coast Guard crew spotted a schooner called the Belle Amica off the coast of Sardinia in the Mediterranean Sea. The vessel was floating aimlessly near Punta Volpe with no crew aboard. It was drifting toward rocks and shallow waters, so the Coast Guard crew boarded it and steered it away. Inside the Belle Amica, they found French maps of North African seas, partially eaten Egyptian meals, a pile of clothing, and the Luxembourg flag. Investigators determined that the boat was never registered in any country, including Italy. At first, the Belle Amica was mistaken for an antique vessel, but detectives learned that it was modern and that its owner was a man from Luxembourg named Frank Rouarou. He had anchored the boat in deep water and abandoned it, later claiming that he planned to return to his yacht after addressing a family emergency back home. For many, the story didn't quite add up. The Italian press suggested that Rouarou may have deserted the Belle Amica to avoid paying taxes on it, but nobody seems to know the real story. Number 2. Spirit of Sacramento. Built in 1942 for the Army Corps of Engineers, the three-story Spirit of Sacramento snug boat was operated until 1954 under the name Puta. In 1955, the legendary actor and filmmaker John Wayne bought the vessel and used it in his film Blood Alley. After John Wayne sold the boat, it was rechristened the Madison Belle. It was used for river tours throughout the 1960s. The vessel got its current name in 1991 under the ownership of Channel Star Excursions. The company hosted dinner parties aboard the Spirit of Sacramento for 5 years until it was mostly destroyed in a fire. In 1996, a man named Captain William Barker paid $120,000 for the badly damaged boat, with plans to rebuild it and use it for dinner cruises. But he kept running into bureaucratic red tape, and the Spirit of Sacramento was repeatedly vandalized while Barker tried to work out these issues. Whenever he was nearly ready to open for business, it seemed like Barker encountered yet another setback. The vessel fell into disrepair, and the state of California sued Barker for its removal from the Sacramento River. He moved the partially submerged boat to dry land, and to this day it remains plopped along a roadside. It's located on private property, but is easily viewable from the road, posing an eyesore for some and piquing the curiosity of others. Number 1. Carroll A. Deering. Shortly before it met with disaster in 1921, the 5-masted cargo schooner Carroll A. Deering was last spotted while passing the Cape Lookout lightship off the North Carolina coast. The American vessel was on its way back to Norfolk, Virginia after delivering a load of coal to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Speaking through a megaphone from the Carroll A. Deering, a tall, thin man with reddish hair and a foreign accent told the Cape Lookout's keeper that the ship had lost its anchors during a storm. He asked the keeper to pass the news on to the ship's owner, the G.G. Deering Company. 3 days later, a surfman named C.P. Brady discovered the Carroll A. Deering off Cape Hatteras, where it had run aground. This area has been known as a common shipwreck site for centuries, earning it the nickname the Graveyard of the Atlantic. Due to bad weather, rescue ships were unable to reach the stranded vessel for several days. Deering's crew, logbook, and lifeboats were all missing, along with the crew members' personal belongings. The ship's rudder was disengaged from its stock and the steering wheel was shattered. It was evident that the crew had abandoned ship in the middle of preparing ingredients for the next day's meal. The Coast Guard tried and failed to salvage the Carroll A. Deering. They declared the ship a navigational hazard and blew it up with dynamite. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but theories abound. Some people suggested that perhaps pirates or communists kidnapped the ship's crew. Others blamed bad weather, but we'll probably never know for sure. Thanks for watching. Which one of these mysterious abandoned ships would you like to see? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.